Hello viewers, today we'll be discussing the topic Comparative Views on Capitalism by Karl Marx and Max Weber. We have already studied the various dimensions and perspectives on capitalism. Today we are going to discuss the views on capitalism and a critique of capitalism based on the ideas and writings of Karl Marx and Max Weber. Students, let us begin with the ideas of Karl Marx. Karl Marx was truly the last of the great critics in the Western intellectual tradition. His ideas, we know, exerted a decisive influence in all aspects of human enterprise and transformed the study of history, society, and economy. They significantly changed the disciplines of anthropology, arts, cultural studies, law, literature, philosophy, political theory by establishing a link between economic and politics. By developing a theory of praxis, Marx brought about a sea change in the entire methodology of social sciences. Max Weber, arguably, is the foremost social scientist of the 20th century. Max Weber is known as a principal architect of the modern social sciences along with Karl Marx and Emile Durkheim. Weber's wide-ranging contributions gave critical impetus to the birth of new academic disciplines such as sociology, as well as significant reorientation of the disciplines of law, economics, political science, and religious studies. Max Weber is best known for his work on the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. In fact, his two very important celebrated contributions were the rationalization thesis, which is a grand meta-historical analysis of the dominance of the West in modern times. And the second one is the Protestant ethic thesis, which is a non-Marxist genealogy of capitalism. Max Weber's views have been much debated. But the key idea in Weber was that there was a link between the rise of capitalism and an ethos of self-control associated with Protestant Reformation. By studying the cultural rather than the economic aspects of capitalism, Weber has always been looked upon as belonging to the anti-Marxist camp. But things are more complicated than that. Weber was choosing to focus on the culture we create rather than dismissing the structural and other issues. He focused more on culture than the economic dimension. Let us now focus on the principal ideas of Karl Marx on capitalism. Karl Marx considers capitalism to be one of the stages in history which was preceded by feudalism. In fact, capitalism was the stage of history which developed with the coming of the Industrial Revolution. Marx defined that this particular progressive historical stage would definitely stagnate because of the internal contradictions prevalent within capitalism. He defined capital as social and economic relation between people, and he believed that there should be some method through which the capitalist exploitation, which is his central thesis, should be abolished. Capitalism believes in private ownership of the means of production and distribution. This enriches the capitalist at the cost of the proletariats. The Marxists argue that the owners of the means of production exploit the working class and the workforce. In Karl Marx's view, the dynamics of capitalism would eventually impoverish the working class and thereby create the social conditions for a revolution through which the capitalist system would be overthrown and a new system of production would come in place. Private ownership over the means of production and distribution is seen as creating a dependence of the non-owning class on the ruling class, and this is a source of restriction of human freedom. So this dependence on the owning class is a limitation on freedom, on human freedom. Now, whereas Karl Marx banks on the possibility of overthrowing capitalism by workers through a socialist revolution, Weber is a fatalistic and resigned observer to the mode of production and administration that seemed to him is inevitable. The anti-capitalist critique is one of the main strong points extending throughout Marx's work, and that gives it its coherence. However, students, this does not prevent one from seeing a certain evolution in his thought. Whereas the Communist Manifesto is insistent on the historically progressive role of the bourgeoisie, capital is more prone to denouncing the ignobility of the entire system. However, we need to understand that while on the one hand, Marx critiqued capitalism, on the other hand, in the Communist Manifesto, he paid handsome tribute to the bourgeoisie and said that capitalism was made attractive because of the prevalence of three reasons. Firstly, capitalism brought about remarkable economic progress by revolutionizing the means of production and developing a technology as never before. It built and encouraged the growth of commerce and factories on a scale unknown before. Secondly, capitalism was cosmopolitan and international. It undermined national barriers. In its search for markets and raw materials, the capitalists crossed national boundaries and penetrated almost every corner of the world. Thirdly, capitalism brought about a change within the territorial confines of a country. It eliminated the distinction between the town and the country and enabled the peasants to come out of what Marx called the idiocy of rural life. In summation, we can say that capitalism to Marx revolutionized the techniques of economic production, reduced international barriers, and created an urban civilization. However, in spite of all these contributions and achievements, Marx contended that capitalism had outlived its usefulness because of the sufferings and hardships it caused to a great number of people. It would have to yield itself to a new socialist means of production. The anti-capitalist critique of Karl Marx is organized around 5 major themes. They are injustice and exploitation, which is the first theme. Secondly, loss of liberty from alienation. Third, venal quantification. Fourthly, irrationality. And the fifth theme is modern barbarism. Now let us try to understand each of these themes one by one. The first thing is quite pervasive in almost all writings of Marx, that is, capitalism is responsible for injustice and exploitation. The capitalist system is grounded independently of this or that political economy on the unpaid surplus labor of workers, giving rise to, through surplus value, to all forms of rent and profit. The extreme manifestation of the social injustice can be found in the exploitation of the workers in times of miserable wages, inhuman working hours, and the sordid conditions of working class life. In other words, it had created innumerable miseries in the life of the working class. But these conditions of the laborers are a matter of a specific historical moment. The system itself is intrinsically unjust, and because of the parasitic exploitation of the labor force by the capitalist. This theme occupies a decisive place in Marx's Capital, and it was essential for the building of the theory of the critique of capitalism. The second anti-capitalist theme is the loss of liberty from alienation. In the capitalist mode of production, individual laborers in particular are dominated by their own products, which take the form of autonomous fetishes and escape their control. To Marx, labor had to be satisfying and fulfilling, which was just not possible under capitalism, because capitalism destroyed the creative pursuits of the working class. The reason was the lack of control of the worker over the entire productive process. Division of labor, specialization of services made the worker a specialist and not the creator of a product. As a result, what happened? The worker alienated himself from his labor and lost interest in the creative process. A laborer had no control over the final product of his labor. The nature of the productive process divided workers and set them against one another. They no longer conceived of their work as a great collective human project. Let us come to the third theme, which is venal quantification of social life. Capitalism, which is regulated by the exchange value and the calculation of profits and the accumulation of capital, tends to dissolve and destroy all qualitative values such as use value, ethical value, human relations. And this is considered to be highly destructive in social relations and social organizations. Marx thinks that capitalism introduces in this sense a profound degradation of social relations and a moral regression of pre-capitalist social relations. The power of money is one of the most brutal manifestations of capitalist quantification. Everything is measured in terms of money and monetary value. The quantity of money becomes more and more unique and powerful property of man. At the same time, it reduces all its abstraction. It is reduced by its own logic to quantitative being. Money becomes the center of all social, political, and economic relations. Coming to the fourth theme, which is irrationality. The periodic crisis of overproduction that jolt the capitalist system unveils its irrationality. Marx calls it absurdity of the production process. And he says that there are too many means of subsistence all around. Even though the majority of the population lacks necessary means of subsistence, there is so much around but so little for the working class. The global irrationality is not contradictory, of course, with a partial and local rationality at the level of production management in the factory system. Marx considers the fact that capitalism and the capitalist system is irrational and bound by irrationality. Coming to the next anti-capitalist theme, which is modern barbarism. In certain sense, capitalism is considered to be the harbinger of historical progress, exemplified by exponential development of production processes, thus creating material conditions for a new society with solidarity and freedom. However, Marx writes that this powerful aspect of creation of the production process, creation of material forces, actually also brings about a new process. We call it barbarianism or barbarity. He says that barbarism reappears, but this time it is engendered in the very core of civilization and becomes an integral part of living. It is leprous barbarism, Marx says. Barbarism, which is the leper of civilization. As society progresses, as capitalism progresses, the civilizational people become more barbaric in their relations with others. All these critiques are not linear in their approach. They are mutually interrelated. One follows the other. They are mutually exchanged. They reciprocally presuppose themselves, and they are articulated in an organized and anti-capitalist vision, which is one of the most important traits in the reflections of Marx. Let us now move on to the ideas of Max Weber on capitalism. The modern sociologists consider Weber's ideas on capitalism to be far more progressive and contradictory than the ideas of Marx. Rejecting all socialist ideas, Weber did not hesitate to sometimes favor the capitalist system of production. He, in some of his writings, favored private capital. Although Weber had a rather critical attitude towards the bourgeois society, he considered capitalism as more progressive social relations and social organizational system than feudalism and other societies. According to Weber, capitalism could only become the most fateful power in human life because it had already developed within the framework of a rational way of life. The bureaucratic rationalization of the modern capitalist society was one of the main features making Weber's interpretation of capitalism distinct from the interpretation provided by Marx. Weber considered the bureaucratic rationalization thesis, which developed regardless of the ownership of the means of production. Max Weber's position on capitalism is much more ambivalent and contradictory than Marx. It goes without saying that the themes of this critique are quite distinct from that of Marx that we have just now studied. Weber ignores exploitation. He is not interested in the economic crisis. He has little sympathy to the struggles of the proletariat and does not call the colonial exploitation or colonial expansion into question. Thus, his questions on capitalism and the critique of capitalism is located in a somewhere different zone. Weber's ideas and interpretation on capitalism is derived from his major work, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Being interested in discovering why capitalism was a Western phenomena and developed in certain Western countries during the Industrial Revolution, he undertook a study of the capitalist development in these countries. In his work, Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, Weber makes a connection between Protestant beliefs and the emergence of capitalism, and which is a very, very interesting theorization. Let us now come to understand how does he deduce a relationship between Protestant ethic and the development of capitalism. Although religion did not bring about capitalism, Weber suggested that religion can definitely bring about social change, which can fuel the process of development of capitalism. He uses Calvinism as an example as to how this change can be brought about. Let us now study what is this Calvinism. Calvinists believe that you were already predestined to go to heaven and you were either among the elect or not before you are born. So your destiny is already predetermined. Nothing that happened during your life here on earth would alter this election to go to heaven or not to go to heaven. Thus, Calvinism was a Puritan form of Protestantism, focusing on self-denial, hard work, and a predetermined selection for entrance to heaven. As Calvinists did not have any way of knowing whether or not they were part of this elect, they had to act as if they have been chosen. So therefore, they lived good lives here on earth and worked hard and contributed more to the society. It was this ascetic work ethic that Weber believes drove capitalism and capitalists into making a lot of money, and this was a sign of hard work and no play. So here, Weber appreciates the capitalist model of production, which he calls hard work and no play. As they denied themselves any comfort and pleasure in life, the money they had over and above their meager living expenses were plowed into their businesses, making them different from other money makers, in so much so that they made money for money's sake, which was not spent on the frivolities of life. Weber theorized that this Protestant ethic gave rise, encouraging and promoting modern capitalism. Thus, we find Weber locating capitalism in a different system. We call it the Protestant ethic. He argues that formal rationalization would overtake religion and do away with it altogether. Now let us try to understand the main factors which, according to Weber, are responsible for the success of capitalism. First, he believes that the appropriation of the material means of production should be considered to be the first stepping stone for the success of capitalism. Secondly, market freedom. Third, rational technology. Fourth, calculable laws. Fifth, formally free labor. And finally, commercialization of economic life. However, students, these 6 are not the only factors responsible for the success of capitalism. Max Weber focuses on another factor, and that is bureaucracy. Marx believed that bureaucracy had a major role in the making of capitalism. He defines bureaucracy as a form of social organization through which rational legal authority is exercised and maintained. It is also this form which clearly takes hold with the advent of the capitalist economic order in a society. Let us go a little deeper into Weber's analysis of capitalism. Whereas Karl Marx felt that alienation of the workers from their products by division of labor within the capitalist system allowed exploitation of workers for the capitalist gains, thereby limiting their true freedom, Weber believed that it was bureaucracies and rationalization that restricted human freedom. Marx believed that man's freedom under capitalism was deceptive and that was never true freedom. He believed that the capitalist wage laborer restricted the worker and was really a form of forced labor. So what the workers were doing was they were working under forcible conditions, and that was a form of exploitation according to Marx. The worker could only sell his labor for the price that the capitalist would pay for his price. Now, for this particular thing, Marx believed that capitalism was predominantly a system of commodity production and an economic-driven system where the price of the labor of a worker was determined by the capitalist and not the worker himself. Weber argued that workers lost control of their work through the forces of rationally controlled production system and believed that this was inevitable. That the bureaucracy of the capitalist system would change the processes in labor and production in order to gain the best profit. Capitalism is identical to the pursuit of profit. And forever, profit making is considered to be the basis of capitalist system, and Weber says that capitalism is a method of continuous rational entrepreneurial system. Weber argued that in a particular capitalist system, the individual joined the organizational structures and functions which are put in place in order to ensure an efficient system in work. Now, this entire structure of the organization works in the best interest of all. By joining these organizations, the individual loses their individuality and get cut off themselves and lost in the officialdom and therefore become alienated. So, Weber believes that it is the workers themselves who get themselves alienated by joining these organizations for the purpose of work. Weber brings about another concept in order to explain his ideas on capitalism. This is called the iron cage. Let us try to understand what is this iron cage. Weber tends to be seen or portrayed as more pessimistic than Marx. Weber sees society become locked in an iron cage through bureaucracy, rationality, and authority. This order is now bound to be technical and economic oriented because it is based on the system of machine production which today determines the lives of all of us, and we are a part of this mechanistic living. Not only for those who are directly concerned with economic forces, and this particular method of mechanization becomes an irresistible force in the system. Perhaps Weber believes that it will so determine them until the last ton of fossilized coal has been burnt. Here we need to bring in Baxter's views, who believes that the care for external goods should only lie on the shoulders of the saint like a light cloak which can be thrown aside at any moment. So it should be lightly worn. But fate decreed that cloak should become an iron cage. So something which should have been easily removed has become an iron cage and is an intrenchable part of your entire life. Marx, however, in this connection was more optimistic than Weber because he saw the possibility of a change of the capitalist system through a revolution. Marx also believed that there was an alternative form to capitalism that could evolve. Here, Marx appears to be more optimistic than Weber. Let us now move on to the main differences between Marx's and Weber's ideas on capitalism. Whereas Marx ascribes capitalism as a phase of the history, Weber attempts an interpretative understanding of social phenomena. Hence, he understands capitalism in terms of psychological motivation of individuals by interpreting their worldview and the meanings they attach to these activities. Secondly, while Marx puts emphasis on economy before religion, Weber analyzes religion before economy in discussing the capitalist system. This is a rather simplistic way of seeing their work. It is more appropriate to say that Weber's analysis complements that of Marx by introducing new dimensions and new angles with which to view a complex phenomena like capitalism. Thirdly, while Marx emphasizes the irrationality and contradictions in capitalism, which will, according to him, lead to change, Weber speaks of rationality. It is this very rationality which imprisons human beings in the iron cage. Marx sees the emergence of capitalism in terms of a shift in the mode of production. According to him, the economy of the material world is the infrastructure of the base which molds the other subsystem, that is the superstructure. So a change in the base leads to a change in the superstructure. The emergence of capitalism is just thus explained in terms of a changed mode of production according to Marx. Whereas Weber's analysis is much more complex. He ignores the economic factors in the emergence of rational capitalism. But to him, the problems of meanings, motivations, and worldview of individuals are far more important than economic factors. Worldview, values, beliefs, sentiments help to guide human action and not economic methods. So, in order to understand why and how rational capitalist emerged, Weber thinks it is important to understand the value system that makes it possible. On the basis of the comparative analysis of Marx and Weber's perspective on capitalism, it may be noted that Marx's central concern was the discovery of the economic laws that explained how capitalism worked and how it would eventually break down. Weber, however, was much interested in how capitalism came to be and why it developed in the Western world. Thus, they had disparate views on history and economics. Both the thinkers have discussed and analyzed the rise of capitalism. Karl Marx shaped his view through his historical materialism, while Weber focused on the forces which shape history. Weber viewed economics as one of the many important factors which contributed to the evolution of human society, but for Marx, economics was the chief factor leading to the development of human society. Although Marx and Weber consider capitalism using different approaches, both thinkers point out that capitalism has negative consequences for human society. However, their vision of the future is very, very different. Marx prescribed revolution and change. Weber did not see any hope in it. To conclude, Marx found capitalism to be rooted in irrationality, while for Weber, capitalism was a reflection of rationality. Thank you.